I'm Shivani Gupta. I'm obsessed with small to medium businesses growing. As business owners, we take so much risk and we want to make sure it's worth it. I believe one of the best presents you can give yourself as a business owner is to be able to learn how to scale your people, your profit, and your processes. Hey everybody, welcome to Grow Your Business podcast. This is Shivani Gupta and I'm your host. As we are heading into Christmas, this is the week before Christmas that this podcast is launching, and I want to talk about 7 tips for managing a multi-generational workforce. There are so many changes that have been happening for managers and leaders and founders of businesses, and it's more now crucial than ever that your managers in your business actually understand what the direct reports are, the different generations that they're managing, the fact that they will also behave differently, often have different value sets in the workforce. And there are a lot of benefits and a lot of challenges for leaders and managers to be able to manage multi-generational teams. Now, the great thing is we get a wider range of skills and experiences, but also sometimes the diversity that happens makes it a lot more difficult for us to be able to manage. So an organization, like even whether you've got 15 employees or you've got over 1,000 employees, one of the things that will happen is that they won't often all fall into one generation or the other. And there's many generations. I have had a podcast on the different generations and how to manage them in the past. This podcast is more about the managers and leaders and founders that are having to manage these people. So we've got the Gen Zs, which are just starting to enter the workforce, which is my kids, their early teens. We've got the millennials, we've got the Gen Xs, the baby boomers, and we also then have some silent generation members. Some people are still working in their 70s. I've got a couple of family members that are still working in their 80s as well. And as there continues to be a global shortage of really good talent, we are going to continue to see some of these issues. And so we're going to sometimes want to pull out some parents and grandparents, and there will be more and more of that, I believe, in the future. So working out how to communicate with them, working out how to gain trust with them, working out how to engage with them and managing their productivity and not judging one against the other is going to be really key. So let me just talk about some strategies that can really help as you are doing that and navigating that across multi-generations. The first one sounds very simple, but it's educating your team, making sure that your team can actually comprehend the advantages of having a multi-generational workforce. This is a great whiteboard exercise, having your team around, whether it's done on Zoom on a whiteboard or done face-to-face on a whiteboard, but just really coming down and talking about some of the great advantages, but also talking about some of the common problems and challenges that come, and just educating your team, talking about the fact that people will be communicating differently, texting differently, using different languages in their emails. All of those things get really important so that people understand that we want to do that. And, from an inclusivity perspective, there are some of the older generations that will need to step up and learn some of those things, and some of the younger generations will need to understand how to communicate that differently as well. We also want to make sure that as leaders and founders that we also create a really respectful environment. It is about respecting the differences rather than judgment and staying out of that judgment. Some reports and people in your team can then feel a bit undervalued, and they can feel that, wow, I'm kind of being ignored here, I'm not being treated equally. And that's not great. And so you want to talk to the direct reports that you've got in your teams and work out what their styles are, even doing DISC or Myers-Briggs, or looking at different needs and how people want to be communicated. So understanding them from a personality perspective, but more importantly, also a communication perspective is really, really important. And you want to keep your eyes on the big picture. So one of the things you want to do is to fully appreciate it. You want to look at the individual's contribution to the business, and you want to remind yourself that, look, everybody's trying to get through different things. Everybody approaches through different things. And one of the things we want to do is make sure that we can overcome some of the obstacles. Another strategy is to take notes from each other. Being a manager, a leader, and a founder of some of these teams, it's really important that they have the ability to be able to ask you questions, Some peer-to-peer mentoring and coaching works really well because you can put yourself in the shoes of the other. So, if you were me, what would you want to see? If you were, what do you want to see? But also, if you were me, what would you want to see? And getting people to actually take notes from each other and doing that. When I'm speaking to business owners and leaders in businesses, which is the main area that I work in terms of people that want to grow their business, is that they often talk about not just getting coaching from somebody in the same industry. They talk about coaching from diverse, there's a lot of things that a baby boomer can learn from a Gen Z and vice versa. And so, we want to be able to see how we can take notes from each other. We also want to fight the stereotypes of these ageism issues that starts. For example, millennials, may be perceived by baby boomers as being not very sociable, or they're always on their technology, and that's a comment that I hear a lot. And Gen Zs may also view the boomers as being very rigid and not just moving at all in terms of what they do. So rather than labeling people, it's so important that if you hear that in the workplace, that you talk about those unconscious biases that they may have, learn from each other, and know that there is some really, really beautiful diversity happening here within the generations, not just in age or gender or culture. We also need to, in businesses, it does become a little bit challenging in terms of how do we adapt to the questions that people may have with diverse. So, for example, options in terms of when people want to work from home will be different for the generations. This is a big challenge for so many businesses right now. Also, the way that your workplace is assembled is really important as well. You may find baby boomers want to do more face-to-face. The Gen Z and the millennials want to do more from home. For example, I am categorizing that might not be the case for your business and the individuals within it. And so you want to look at those challenges and obstacles that come your way as a leader and founder, and look at how you can create more personal growth. And how do we find some individual and tailored solutions to be able to support the people as well. And the last thing that I wanted to talk about is not to overlook the similarities. I've talked a lot about differences, but they can also, you might be really surprising that you'll find that even team members from different generations, they'll have also many things in common, despite what they outwardly and perhaps their communication looks like. And so there's a lot of parallels in there. For example, everybody wants to be happy, everybody wants to be respected, everyone wants to do meaningful work and make sure that they can attain their goals. So here is just some strategies, and they're more conversation starters in terms of what you can do to be able to manage a multicultural, diverse group of people. I just also wanted to thank you for tuning in for this year. I know that many of you that listen tune in all the time, and I so appreciate your support. Some of you I might have met, some of you I've maybe only met through this podcast, and I've really appreciated. And I'm also very excited to let you know that I'm also launching some retreats, which are on the askshivani.com website, with this amazing woman called Sally Duxfield. We will be doing retreats in New Zealand, Canada, and India in 2024. Have a look at some of the things that we are planning online. And if you've got any questions, shout out. Thank you for tuning in the week before Christmas. Any questions you have, please remember our website is called Ask Shivani. Speak to you soon. I'm Shivani Gupta, and you've been listening to the Grow Your Business podcast. I hope you got one idea that you can think about or perhaps even implement straight away in your business. Thank you for listening. Follow me on Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn under Ask Shivani. Remember, I call it Ask Shivani, so please send me your questions that I can address in this podcast for you. And I would also so appreciate if you went to the Apple Podcast to rate and review this podcast.